Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Wrestling doesn't make sense. We have a great episode lined up today, I believe, because right now we are in the very midst, or right at the very beginning.
Cusp.
The cusp. Yeah, the cusp is better because we're not in the midst of it yet. We're on the cusp of another big wrestling promotion war, if you will. Because I know people like to describe it as such. Although we haven't seen any tanks yet, or any
Not yet.
little fucking, because like a little Range Rover that looks a bit like it doesn't, it has a gun on the front, so it's a tank. I don't think so, man. Remember? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
I get
talking
where you're
about
going with that.
talking about when DX supposedly like crashed the fucking party on WCW back in the day. Like, we're going to war, we're going to tank, and it was like a little Jeep. It was a Range Rover, and like a gun that didn't fire properly, and they're like, we're coming to take over, and they were big publicity because they were going to WCW, and WCW didn't open their doors, and I heard Eric Bischoff say that like he didn't know about that, and if he did know about that, he would have opened the doors.
Yeah, he should have.
Because he's like, fucking bring him into our show. We'll put them on our TV show. It's a brilliant idea. So I really would have loved to see what they have done if they had have opened the doors and they were like, well, I guess we have to go in then. But anyway, the point is we're in the cusp of a new wrestling war between WWE with the NXT brand, which has finally come into network television, against AEW, All Elite Wrestling, which is going to come on television in 2 weeks.
That's correct, yep.
What channel is that going to be on?
So that's on TNT, which is the old classic WCW channel.
Nice. And NXT was on what channel?
USA Network.
Nice, a good classic WWF channel or WWE
Yeah.
channel.
I think they're both like a similar sort of size as well. I think they've got a reach of about 90 million homes in America. So,
wow.
Like the potential audience is pretty big, but like the actual audience they get is probably going to be significantly less than that.
Yeah, I would say so. Given the way the ratings have been going these days, I don't think we're going to be hitting like 90 million anytime soon.
No.
Wishful thinking, of course. I mean, if it did happen, they were like, well, this has been a total success.
Yeah, should have done this sooner.
Very rarely do both sides win in a war, you know what I mean? But I would imagine if it took off, both sides would be like, we did this. This is working out perfectly. So I guess we should talk about some of that stuff. I want to ask you a question, though, real quick.
Okay.
I don't know if I should leave this for later, but I want to ask it now. Like, the big war that we all remember, WCW versus WWF, it came about pretty much from one specific moment, right? Like, they were against each other for a while, and they would pull moves like Lex Luger turning up in the first episode of Nitro and all of this stuff, right? But we all know that it was one specific turning point in the war, which ironically kind of led to its own downfall. Well, not quite, but you know what I mean. It ended up biting them in the ass, basically. Which was
the whole announcing that Mick Foley was going to win the title on Raw.
Well, that did bite them in the ass.
Yeah.
But yes, that was a good swerve. But we all know that we're talking about the NWO, which changed the game. And really made people step up and proved that it was kind of a war, because now the underdogs had come up with a really good plan to fight back against the unstoppable army. It was very interesting, and during that time wrestling was considered to be pretty cool. Even after the NWO kind of faded out, wrestling still had this the Attitude Era was cool.
Or you had like a good combined 10 million people plus watching it every week on a Monday night.
Yeah,
either Raw or Nitro.
It's just insane,
It
wasn't really cool, but it gave off the air of being cool. You know what I mean? Because a lot of crap happened in those days, but they made it look cool, which they're like, all right, fair enough, I'll take it. So you would imagine AEW are gonna have to pull some kind of move. Like they're talking about how they're not at war. Well, Chris Jericho says they are. Cody Rhodes says they aren't. Um, but they kind of talk about how they're not at war with the WWF or WWE. They just want to exist as like a second option for people because the way that people consume media these days, it's more immediate and you can take your time with it and you don't have to watch the show on the night that it's out.
Yeah.
So like there's all sorts of factors coming in. So they've made it clear that they're happy to be an alternative and they're not at war. But you know, they're still going to have to do something pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were to fire a shot at the WWE, like what would they have to do to like be as meaningful as the NWO? Because they can't do that again. Because that's, I think, would definitely backfire in their faces. Because that angle worked at the time, and at the genesis of it, it was well thought out, and it made sense. And it was a really cool angle that people in the States hadn't seen before. So, like, what could they do? They've already taken like Moxley and Jericho, which is pretty good, right? People are like, wow, you know, and Pac as well, I guess, but that's kind of a different story. But like they have some of these big names, but what are they gonna do? And again, you know, WCW went to Monday Nitros for a while, a couple of years before they hit on the NWO. So you know, this revolutionary thing that AEW might do to really draw attention to themselves might not happen for a few years. But like, what do you think they could do that would really like light a fire under Vince McMahon's ass? You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think that like the classic thing is maybe for some defections to happen, because that was sort of the big thing back in the Monday Night Wars, where you could have someone like Lex Luger suddenly show up on Nitro, or Chris Jericho comes over to Raw or whatever. Like that was cool, because you know these are two distinct brands, two distinct companies, and all of a sudden you have this whole situation where someone can go from one to the other, and it breeds more shock value than if, say, someone moves from Raw to SmackDown, like especially nowadays when there's like no sort of rhyme or reason to the draft split in WWE at the moment. So I don't know, because like in terms of big ideas, there's not really a lot more that you can do to kind of set it apart and do something that's completely new that no one's seen before. So I just think sort of the getting talent in from WWE and like big names choosing to come over and wrestle for AEW would be obviously a huge thing for them. But as to who that might be, I have no idea. Same as when it might be as well, because I'm sure it won't be straight away.
Well, I was thinking about this, right? Because they have their live show in 2 weeks. So, like, if they were to have a guy on their show on the first night that was actually from the WWE, that would be a really interesting move, wouldn't it? So, like, I don't have anybody specific in mind, but I was thinking, like, what's the name of the guy? Tony Khan?
Yeah.
Who owns the company, or is like a major contributor to the company, or does he own it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he owns it, bankrolls it, and he's part of the creative process as well.
He definitely bankrolls it. So like, would it be out of the realms of possibility for him to kind of contact somebody who is contracted with the WWE at the moment and say, listen, man, if you're not happy with your spot right now, come to AEW, turn up on the first show, right? You're gonna get sued for that. I'm gonna cover your bills.
I mean,
I'll cover your legal bills for breach of contract. I'll sort it out. I got the money for it. All you got to do is turn up. You don't have to worry about a thing.
I don't know. I don't think it'd be worth it though, because you might get that initial shock value, but it's, like WWE would almost instantly counter sue or whatever, and they'd block you from being able to use that guy who's under contract. So you'd only get him for 1 week maybe, and then it just smacks of like WCW back in the day, where they just kind of react week by week to ratings rather than doing concentrating on like a big sort of bigger picture. So I don't know. It might immediately grab them some headlines, but in the long term, it probably wouldn't be that great for them.
But are they averse to doing that? For example, if they're just off the top of my head, for an example, their world heavyweight champion were to win their world heavyweight championship, and then almost immediately accidentally lose it and turn that into an angle where somebody stole it and then work with the police to make it look like it was stolen and then return within like 24 hours or whatever. If they were to do something like that, which is a thing that would generate headlines momentarily with no immediate payoff, is it beyond the realms of possibility that they could do such a thing with using a talent on the show that's contracted?
Well, first of all, do you think that was a work then?
I'm not 100% sure that it's a work, but I am very, very suspicious about the whole thing.
I am about wrestling in general, like every sort of backstage story,
yeah.
But I don't know, like it seems like the kind of thing that could conceivably happen. Although the guy's story, the guy who found it, sounded like bullshit though. I can't remember what exactly he said, but I think he said like he found it on the side of the road.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was inside a bag, and
which he didn't open.
When you're driving down the road and you see a bag by the side of the road, so you stop to get out to see what's inside it.
Yeah, but he didn't even see what was inside it. He just picked it up off the side of the road, then drove home apparently, and then thought to look in it, and then it was like, oh, what's this? Like a championship belt?
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep hold of this then.
Yeah, I mean, that all makes sense. There's the whole thing. There's an air of suspicion about it. Not it doesn't all add up, which is interesting.
I'd like to think if it was a work, they'd have come up with a better story.
Right. But at the same time, like, for 2 or 3 days, that's all people were talking about.
Yeah.
And, it got them buzz. And Jericho, to his credit, played it off very well. Because, he's a master. But, that's all I'm saying is, like you said, you're always a little suspicious about stuff anyway, because you're never sure when they're working you or when they're not. So I'm just saying, it's not. I personally don't think it's outside the realms of possibility for something like that to happen. For example, if you look at what they've done with a guy like Ty Dillinger, he's now Sean Spears.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, he was doing nothing on that in that company, like literally nothing. And they made him into a name. They've given him stuff to do. He's working with Cody Rhodes, who's one of their top guys. He's in the eyes of the audience that they're going for, he now looks like a credible contender.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that crazy for somebody else to look at the kind of success he is having and could have and probably will have in that company and think, I could do that too. And maybe make a brash move like that. You know what I mean? Because it does seem like a very WCW-ish kind of thing to do, I would remind you who is the head booker of that company. Isn't it Cody Rhodes? Of the world-famous Rhodes family, who are synonymous with WCW and questionable booking. You know what I mean? Like, obviously Cody Rhodes is a different person than his father, but like, I'm just saying, keep your eyes open. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, though, you kind of have to look at it from the TNA angle as well, where they kind of kept going for every single like WWE cast-off, like signing them up, giving them big contracts, thinking, oh yeah, we'll use this name value to kind of grab some ratings and some headlines and whatnot. And, they might have given them like an initial little boost, but it didn't turn out to, change the company's fortunes or anything. Like, they still kind of had their steady ratings, or ratings that ended up declining, but, it didn't really help them long term. And I think part of the problem there is if you're constantly relying on, grabbing the competition's wrestlers and, the guys who've got fired for whatever reason, or who've decided to leave, then you kind of stop trying to build your own stars, and that seems to be something that AEW really want to do, is just create their own stars rather than rely on cast-offs from WWE. So I would suspect that it won't be a case of WWE guys coming over straight away, but I mean, I'm sure there will be like some big defections at some point or another.
Yeah, I would definitely keep your eyes on both rosters, I think, because I think that's going to be very interesting how all of that works. It could end up that somebody could be tempted back to the WWE and just end up like EC3, you know what I mean? Like, guaranteed a big money contract, and then they just fucking do nothing with them, which isn't a good idea unless you just want to sit around and make money like I do. So maybe I should become a wrestler.
Yeah, just get signed by WWE and then sit in catering every week. That'd be perfect,
wouldn't it? You just get to fly all over the world.
Yeah, and you'd get to eat as well. So
yeah, I don't see any, and you don't have to do any work. I mean, this sounds like my dream job, to be honest with you. But,
yeah.
All right, I think I'm too old to start wrestling though. You know what I mean?
Same here.
If I started now, I'm like, body doesn't like it.
No, too many aches and pains already without wrestling.
I know, right? And we're not even old. We're not even that old. We're only 21 years old.
Yep.
Plus a couple other ones. But, alright, so AEW seem to have their stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to like they have a tournament in place for their tag team championship. They've already established their heavyweight championship. I think their women's championship will be decided on the first show.
Yeah, that's right. Nyla Rose versus Riho. I think Nyla Rose won like the women's casino battle royal at I want to say All Out, the last show they did, and Rio beat like another Japanese wrestler to earn her spot as well.
Doesn't that seem weird?
Yeah, the booking hasn't really grabbed me so far, to be honest, with some of the decisions. Like in the tag team tournament as well, there was a match between the Dark Order and the Best Friends at All Out, and the winner of that match got a first round bye in the tag team title tournament. So it's like, why not just stick them in the tournament and add another team and do it properly? Why do buys? Or...
Yeah, right. And they totally could. Who did they beat?
They beat the Best Friends, which is Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta.
Aren't they in the tournament anyway?
Yeah, they are. So it didn't really affect them that much.
So like they get two shots.
Essentially, yeah.
And also, didn't they just sign like LAX?
Yes, they have. Yeah, I believe so.
No, I get that maybe they came in a little too late for the tag team tournament, but like, that could have been I mean, they're a good tag team. You could have fit them into a tag team tournament, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Interesting. But I agree with what you say about some of the questionable booking because again they're only starting out and they're doing shows every so often, so you don't have to think about it too much. But yeah, some of the stuff is a little odd. I want to ask you a question that I don't know if you have the answer for. Because I love doing this. But I became intrigued by something by keeping up with the AEW stuff, and I want to know the answer to this question because I haven't bothered to research it myself, but I'm sure there is a logical answer.
Okay.
Kenny Omega. Yes. Yep. That's not the question. Kenny Omega has he appeared? How many times? Okay, how many shows have they done so far? 4?
I want to say 4 or 5.
Do you know how many times Kenny Omega has appeared on those shows as a wrestler?
I think most of them, to be honest.
How many times has he won?
Not very many. I think he lost his first match against Chris Jericho. Then I believe he faced Cena in his second match, which he did win. I can't remember the third show, but I'm pretty sure he might have lost that as well. That was that Fight for the Fallen. No, he beat Cena that show. Yeah, I don't know. I'd say he's kind of got a bit of a mixed record so far.
Okay, I feel, and this is something that somebody could easily correct me on, but I feel like he's lost more than he's won already, and I think that's weird to notice in a guy that they obviously have big plans for. I would say Kenny Omega is going to be a pretty big deal in that company.
Yeah, you'd assume so.
And it's interesting that they talk about statistics a lot, and they hype that up about how they're going to keep track of wins and losses, and that's going to be a big deal. And already we're starting to see, and like I said, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but it looks like Kenny Omega is on the losing side of that statistical scale, which is interesting. I would like to see how they played that out, because if he's going to be one of their big guys and wins and losses matter, and they've only had a couple of shows so far with their big guys, and one of those big guys tends to lose in those big situations more than he wins, that's something they need to highlight.
Yeah, I'm sure it will change as time goes by. You got to remember as well, a lot of, say, WWE fans don't know or haven't really watched any Kenny Omega matches or Young Buck matches. So this whole AEW thing is almost introducing them to a bigger audience. So
right, but if you hear that this Kenny Omega guy was a big fucking deal in Japan, and then the first time you hear about him and you see him is on AEW, and he loses a lot so far, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not having a go at them, but I'm it's to me it seems a little noticeable. So I just want to see, and I guess we'll get our answer in about 2 weeks. I don't know if he's booked for the first show.
Yeah, it's actually him and the Young Bucks teaming up to take on Chris Jericho and some mystery partners, who I've got a really bad feeling is going to be Enzo and Big Cass, but we'll see.
Do you honestly think it's going to be Enzo and Big Cass?
Well, I did before, the whole reports from this past weekend of Big Cass kind of losing his mind a bit and, getting kicked out of a show because he was calling out Joey Janela.
Yeah, that is a weird kind of beef going on there as well.
And Joey Janela's part of the AEW roster as well, so you think, well, if that happened, then maybe they can't really exist in the same locker room with AEW as well, so
yeah, but wow, I mean, I would never have thought that those two mugs would have been, because again, from my opinion and experience of it, I would feel that right now Enzo and Cass don't have the biggest following,
No, definitely not.
and their actions throughout all of this year have been questionable, and have kind of turned people away from them, and would not have made me think that AEW would be at all interested in them.
Mm.
So I'm very surprised that you would think that, because I just would never have thought that. But then again, maybe that's why they were going to do it. Because
Well, just the fact that it's mystery partners. Like, who else could it be? You'd assume it's going to be someone with a bit of name value, but I mean, I can't think of any other team. Like, unless they do what you suggest and pay off the Revival to come over to
dude,
AEW.
Just while we were saying that, I was thinking like, how fucking mind blowing would it be if the current fucking SmackDown Tag Team Champions turned up on that show in 2 weeks and fucking ended up being the tag partners? Like that would be a shot fired.
Yeah.
That would be very, very interesting indeed. Because the Revival and the Young Bucks have been doing that thing where they're always talking about how they're going to meet in the ring someday and we're going to fight eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if that did happen, that would be way more interesting than Enzo and Cass.
Yeah. Well, I think anything would be way more interesting than Enzo and Cass.
Oh, do you not feel sorry for them?
Not really. After like Enzo crashing Raw or whatever it was earlier this year, I was like, what a dick.
Yeah, they have not done a very good job of promoting themselves too well, I don't think.
No.
But God bless them for trying, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to ask that thing about Kenny Omega because I was interested, but I'm sure you have some other things you can drop on about what you think about this whole AEW NXT war that's going on now, because as we're recording this, NXT is probably going live on television right now. So, do you think this is a good thing, NXT being on TV?
I do, and it by all accounts, it's something that isn't just like a reaction to AEW's TV deal and stuff like that. It is something that's been in the works for a while. Like there was rumors of them going to network TV last year, but I think it's sort of a similar situation to the whole NXT UK and how that got fast tracked as soon as ITV over here in England or Britain announced that World of Sport was being revived. Like that sort of spurred the WWE into action, and I think AEW having this TNT deal, which was kind of it was pretty obvious it was happening even before they announced it. That's kind of spurred WWE into making this push for NXT. At the same time, it's like a good thing for NXT as well, because as much as I love like the whole 1 hour format of the show, it's like a nice easy kind of hour to digest every week. But now it gives a chance for more of a spotlight for like all of the talent that they've got on the cards as well. So there's so many talented wrestlers in NXT right now, and well, there always has been, but it just means that they all get more of a showcase, and fingers crossed as well, considering like this TV deal is worth $50 million a year, they're all getting paid a bit better as well.
You would hope so. Like, I really hope that they're all getting that significant pay boost for this, because those are the guys that should be getting the money, because they're the ones doing most of the work. And I do agree about having the second hour, because 2 hours is fine. 2 hours is a fine amount of TV for a wrestling show.
Yeah.
3 hours is too many, but 2 hours can work if you book it right. And I think that you're correct in that there are a lot of people that we don't see on NXT regularly because they only have 1 hour, and they usually keep it very tight. They're very good with their time management. And so they showcase the right people at the right times, but they can grow a lot more people with a second hour. So yes, I think that's all a good thing, and it sounds like Triple H is still going to be running his fingers through it, which is
but
news.
The thing that worries me is like the whole ratings issue. Like, as if say AEW starts beating NXT in the ratings, and it becomes like a consistent thing, you just know that Vince is going to step in and then sort of take creative away from Triple H and end up turning NXT into, like Raw Light or something. So, the big worry is like it will lose its NXT-ness in a way.
Yeah, but my argument would be that surely it is its NXT-ness, which is the reason that it's in this specific spot. Because if you were going to counter AEW with anything, the logical thing to counter it would be NXT, which is far closer to what AEW would be than Raw or SmackDown.
Oh yeah.
So if you want,
like they're fighting fire with fire almost.
Exactly, the people who watch Raw and SmackDown are going to be watching Raw and SmackDown anyway. But if you want to take the AEW hardcore guys, you want to put them up against the show that those kind of guys would want to watch, and give them like a proper choice there, so you can maybe kind of steal some more viewers there. So I would imagine they're not going to be too upset about the ratings, because I think they're both drawing from the same kind of audience pool, AEW and NXT. So if the numbers are quite compatible, very comparable, then even if AEW are like ahead, they're not going to be ahead by like millions and millions. You know what I mean? I think that AEW might have the lead, but it's going to be a very small lead, and so with that in mind, I reckon they're not going to worry too much about it. If the ratings start to drop like significantly, if they're really low, then yes, maybe Vince would be like, "We need more tits, goddammit."
Yeah.
Although they don't really have tits on the show anymore, so I don't know why I said that, but I couldn't think of anything else. That it needs more midgets, god dang it. That sounds like Vince McMahon. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be too much of an argument there. I think Triple H is still going to be looking after his little NXT baby for a while yet, which is good news for everybody.
Mm-hmm. It sort of explains why he was sort of overlooked when, like Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman got these new fancy jobs with Raw and SmackDown. Like, that explains why Triple H wasn't in the mix as well. Like, if this NXT deal was on the horizon and they were coming to network TV, it kind of makes sense now that, that's always been Triple H's baby, and now he can kind of bring it onto TV and, do what he wants with it.
Exactly. It gives him like something less to worry about, because he's going to know that Paul Heyman knows his shit. And Eric Bischoff has proven to be very capable as well. So he's like, at least I can kind of, put the trust in those guys and Vince, and they can handle that shit, and I can handle NXT. And it'll all run very smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this should be very interesting.
So, with AEW, they're obviously going to be traveling to like different arenas and different cities every week, but NXT is supposed to be in Full Sail like week after week. Do you think that's a good thing? Because looking at TNA and like all the years they spent at Universal Studios, the crowd there just seemed to get burnt out a bit. Like, they kind of had that sort of attitude where they'd been there, seen it, done that, and got the T-shirt, and they weren't as invested in the show after a certain point. So do you think that like NXT runs the risk of going that same route if they're just stuck in Full Sail all the time?
Well, wasn't part of the issue with Impact that they were taping their shows there? Like, they weren't all live, were they?
Well, yeah, that's true as well. Yeah,
I think like you could definitely see why an audience would be deflated if they have to sit through 2 or 3 kind of episode tapings, especially if you have to do retapes and other stuff and save stuff for next week and shoot stuff out of order. you can see why people might be a little deflated after that. Whereas with NXT, it still seems like it's going to be weekly in there. And also, I think that because NXT is going to be on TV, and because they're going to be putting a lot of focus onto it, I would imagine that they will probably be doing some touring for NXT, and I would say that I would imagine that while they're going to do the bulk of their live shows from Full Sail, maybe like once or twice a year, they'll do like a month or two of touring around the United States or even overseas, for example, just for a little bit, and then tape a couple of shows there, or like film them live or anything like that, just like once or twice for a few months, and then go back to Full Sail for the bulk of it. So I think they've got options. They don't have to. Like Full Sail is a great home for them to come back to, but there's no harm in them kind of like stretching out a bit, which they could totally do. I think that once they're on TV, they'll have the audience, and then they can gauge and see like, is there an audience for these? Would people want to go and see them, and then work from there.
Yeah, and I guess it would help make NXT into more of a legitimate third brand as well, because when you see, say, like Raw and SmackDown in these big arenas and stuff, and then compare that to the size of Full Sail and where NXT is taped, there's like a world of difference there. Like, you're talking arenas for Raw and SmackDown which hold like anywhere from say 5 to 15, 20,000 people, whereas Full Sail looks like it holds, maybe 1,000 at most, and even that seems kind of generous. So, just from like a sort of visual point of view, they might need to move away from Full Sail eventually, especially when AEW seem to be, selling out every show that they announce at the moment. They've got such a sort of groundswell of support from people who are kind of fed up with WWE and or just like back in the sort of the new thing, and it's crazy to see them go into these arenas and selling out and stuff. So that's going to be like a big visual difference between the two shows, I think, as well. Like one which could make AEW look like it's bigger and therefore more important than NXT.
Well, maybe, but like you said, a lot of it is people backing the new kid, the new corporation, the new thing, and they're not going to be new for very long. That's something you wanna take into consideration as well. Like, we've seen them sell out a lot this year with their big shows, but that's because so far they've only had 4 or 5 big shows. And yes, their TV tapings are starting to sell out too, but this is just their first year. So like, you take into account the number of TV tapings they've sold out already, you're talking what, 10 to 15 shows?
No, absolute most, yeah.
So, for them to sell out that many shows is pretty good. Like, there's no denying that that's good business. They want to sell out the shows. It's good that they're selling them out quickly. But I imagine a lot of that is because of the newness and the attraction of it, and the kind of like bitterness isn't the word, but the idea that they're kind of, some of the fans are like sticking 2 fingers up at the Vince McMahon and the WWE by going, we're supporting these guys, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But spite can only last you so long, you know what I mean? Like,
you've got to follow up on it and deliver the goods.
Exactly. Like, I don't even know if they've announced all their shows till like December. I think they're only into November now. And if they're still selling out into December, that's good. But will you see what it's like come Royal Rumble time? You know what I mean? Will you see what it's like come WrestleMania time? Because if it's WrestleMania time and you can only afford, like, you work at your job and you can only afford to go to one big wrestling show a month, which is still, that's that in itself is not easy to. That's that's quite a big ask to go to a wrestling show every month and spend that money.
Yeah, except for that one long-haired guy with a beard who's at every WWE show.
There's two of them. There's that guy, and then there's the guy with the green shirt. And he.
Oh, no. I'm not sure who's the green shirt guy.
Oh, you'll see him every single show. Same shirt, green shirt. He's got a hat, and he is like dead center in the hard camera, because long hair guy is usually kind of to the left or to the right.
Yeah.
Green shirt guy, bang in the middle every single time. I don't know how the fuck he does it, man. Get a different shirt. It's the same fucking green shirt, man. But like, normal people who aren't fucking lottery winners like those two idiots are can't really do that. So when it comes to like WrestleMania time, are you going to be able to go and see a big AEW show, or are you going to go see WrestleMania? Because we slag off WWE a lot, but their big shows are pretty fucking cool, and you want to go to them. WrestleMania is an experience now. It's a cool thing to go to. So like, once we like, it's cool to see them have this success so far. That's great. And I imagine they're gonna keep it up for a while because they're doing really well. But like, they're not going to be selling out arenas forever, and I would say they're not going to be selling out arenas by the first half of next year. You know what I mean? Like once they get into like the road to WrestleMania, as it were, like take a look at the ratings then and the sellout shows and stuff like that. Because those are the times when the idea that you're being spiteful would actually make a difference. When you're confronted with the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, two of their biggest shows, I would say arguably their two biggest shows. SummerSlam's in there too, but like, they're big deals, and so if people want to give two fingers to Vince McMahon so badly, that's the kind of time, those 3 or 4 months, is when they need to put all of the energy and money and effort and attention into AEW. And so it's going to be interesting to see if that actually does make a difference. Because that is, what are we in, September now? So we're talking January, we're talking 3 months away. Right? If after 3 months...
I think it's more like, is it 3 months? Is it 4 months? 4 months or something.
Well, ish. Let's say 4 months. Let's say, like, after 4 months, let's see if they're still selling out shows. And again, they don't have to sell out the shows. If after 4 months they're still doing really well and they're still selling out, then that's great. They find a home and they're doing well and they can be an alternative. I'm just saying, like, keep an eye on those numbers too. It's impressive that they sold out a lot, but at this early stage of the game, I don't think that that's necessarily an indicator that they're,
Yeah.
And,
well, this is the kind of thing as well, because NXT is established. Like, kind of what you're getting with it. Like week in, week out, we've seen for the past however many years they've had NXT as this sort of development league for the WWE. You get good quality matches, you get simple, like easy to grasp storytelling, video packages that kind of sell feuds and stuff, even if like the people aren't actually on the shows. So it's kind of, it's established, whereas AEW sort of haven't really had a chance to do that yet. Like even with the shows they've put together already, like most of it has been a lot of sort of random matches, not very many like segments in the ring or backstage or anything like that. So there's not much in the way of storylines going into their debut, aside from the stuff that they've kind of, tried building up on their like internet shows, like Being the Elite and whatever kind of road to TNT or whatever stuff they've been doing recently. So it's like in a sense, like at the moment, NXT have a lot more momentum coming into this sort of war between the two brands than AEW do, really, because they haven't had a chance yet to kind of, stamp their authority and say, this is who we are, this is how we intend to do things, this is who we're pushing, and all that kind of jazz.
Right. They do have the jump on it and stuff like that. I had heard that AEW weren't really going to do a whole lot of backstage stuff, though. I heard they were going to do most of their stuff out in the ring. And that's
it's not a bad thing, because it differentiates them from WWE completely.
Well, yes, but also, like you said, that's a really good way to get people over and to get stuff to happen and to move things along. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes they're a little overblown, backstage segments and all that stuff, but like, all of that stuff does make a difference in how you get somebody over. So, like, it's stuff like this that makes me wary of AEW. Like, the way they talk about, things like that, and about how specific they're going to be about the statistics, and like, kind of mixed messages like this. Like, they say they're going to go for a more realistic style of, like, wrestling, and they're going to be a little bit edgier, this kind of talk, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got guys on that show like the Young Bucks, who I in the past have kind of criticized for being spot monkeys, right? They're not the most realistic wrestlers on the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That ears more towards the silly side of wrestling than the technical side of wrestling. And you've got other guys like Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy who are fun and entertaining, but they're on that kind of side too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess you could even say Chris Jericho is like more of a name than a wrestler these days.
Yes.
Like,
he's very cartoony, he's very exaggerated, he's very over the top, and not necessarily like a kind of serious wrestler. So, but basically what my point is going to be is that they've made a big deal about being like a wrestling company and promoting that style of it. But they've also made a big deal about letting wrestlers be more creative and more free to do what they want in the show, right? So, by deduction, that means that some of the wrestlers on their show are going to want to do goofy stuff that isn't, pure wrestling. And I'm interested to see if somebody is there to, like, tell them to tone that kind of stuff down. Because, again, that's stuff that I've heard from that company, that they're not going to do that. They're going to let the wrestlers go out and do whatever they want. Or within the confines of a match, you know what I mean? Like, they can't just go out and do whatever they want. But, like, they have the freedom to work the match in their way. But people work matches in different ways. Like, the WWE get criticized a lot for some of the way that they kind of produce their matches and stuff. But at least it all is kind of uniform. And it all, adheres to the same rules. But basically, ECW had, like, kind of an air of comedy about it. And it had an air of, like, legitimacy about it. There were real wrestlers on that show. And it got the reputation for being a hardcore championship kind of company. None of those matches outside of ECW would have worked.
Yeah.
It works for that company. Everything that happened in that company made sense within that company. Whereas if you watch stuff like WCW, you always got the impression that the important thing was the main event, and the main event was a bit lame, and the fun was like the luchador stuff, but you never saw that, and it never got booked right. And at WWE at the moment, everybody kind of works in a kind of like similar style, if you know what I mean. If you've watched WWE for a while, you kind of know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Which I guess is what you're saying about the NXT, like, you know what you're getting. And AEW haven't figured out what they want to be. Do they want to be Strong Style, or do they want to be Chikara, or do they want to be Ring of Honor? You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I would be very interested to see whether or not they have to, like, tone people down for stuff, or try to tell them that some of that stuff just isn't going to work with the vision of the company. because you can give the wrestlers all the creative freedom you want, but at the end of the day, you're running a company, and the company has to have an image. And if people don't know what they're watching before they watch it, they're not going to watch it. Do you know what I
No,
mean?
that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, I got
And
there in the end.
yeah, but yeah, I know what you mean because it's kind of similar with this whole idea of like AEW don't want to script promos or at least not script them as much as WWE does. They want to give the talent like the chance to go out there and say stuff that in their own sort of voice, like it's almost like how it was back in the Attitude Era where they'd get like bullet points and stuff and not have every single word written out for them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it? That's like that's a good sort of philosophy as far as I'm concerned because it's that sort of system where you kind of sink or swim. You go out there and you say stuff that is supposed to sell a match or a feud or whatever, but it's down to you to actually sell it. And in a way, that's a good thing. But at the same time, there's a reason WWE started scripting it was because you have more control and you can kind of point the direction where you want it to go and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to be interesting to see, I guess, like for all the talk of AEW giving wrestlers freedom to wrestle or how they want to wrestle and give promos how they want to give them, like how much leeway they give them for that in the long run, because at some point you have to think there's going to have to be some oversight, there's going to have to be someone who's got like the grand view of everything and can say, actually, yeah, don't do that because that's going to happen in this match as well. So,
right, exactly. It's stuff like that. Like, it's something that I really wonder about. Like, I had heard that in the last show, the Young Bucks, that match, was it that the Young Bucks match that went on too long and they had to cut time off another match?
I think so. I think it was the Young Bucks.
That shit's going to be really important to learn for TV. And I know that I think they got Orn Anderson in, which is good because that guy's going to know a lot about that kind of stuff, about the timing and about working for a TV show, because it's all about pacing and stuff. But that stuff's very important. And God bless them, there are people on the indies who might be a little bit like, well, I want to get my shit in. I need to get my stuff in. They need really good producers. They need all of this stuff in place, and they need people who are going to adhere to the rules. So, like, that was kind of my criticism, is that the AEW seemed to have promised a lot of stuff, but I'm like, you can't promise this stuff before you've thought it out. We need to see it, and we need to see how that works. Because if you do that and then you go back on yourself, then people are going to be like, well, you promised us this and you didn't deliver. And that's the trick, is that you can't please people all of the time. And if you say something as kind of blanket that coats all, like, hey, everybody's got the freedom to do whatever they want, very quickly, I fear, you're going to get some kind of objection to that. Somebody's going to have to say, we got to do this, we got to do that. You just have to do it. It's just the way it's going to work. So that kind of stuff I find interesting. I would like to see how that plays out. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. But it is going to be like a learning process as well for AEW. Like NXT have the advantage because they've technically been on TV for how many years? I don't know, like 7, 8 years, whatever. But they know what they're doing already, and they can just essentially keep doing that. Whereas AEW are still finding their feet and are gonna have this kind of period of time where they're figuring stuff out, and that might be to their disadvantage in this. Like, if it does turn out to be like a proper Wednesday night war or whatever they want to call it, like, they've got to kind of react a bit quicker and figure out stuff that they maybe haven't even thought about because, if they get it wrong initially and keep getting it wrong for a few weeks, then that could be costly when it comes to the ratings or, even just like fan reactions on Twitter or wherever. So,
Right.
They've got like people behind the scenes who know what they're doing, like you say, Arn Anderson and Cody Rhodes, who's been part of the like WWE machine and stuff. So it's just a case of, I guess, finding their feet as quickly as possible.
See, that's what they're gonna have to do because the trick is NXT. The guys in NXT are so good because they have the performance center. So like they immediately, automatically have something. If they're not good at something, they can work on it, and they can work on it with some of the best in the business. Like, Shawn Michaels is down there, and William Regal is down there, and you've got plenty of other people who work down there. Albert works down there. All these guys, like there is like such a wealth of like information there. Not even from like a wrestling standpoint, as in like their peers that they can pick the brains of, but they've also got all of the facilities and they've got all the time in the world to practice and go over everything they need, so that whenever they are in NXT, they can do it. And if they don't do it, that's on them. You know what I mean? It's not on the company, because the company did everything it could to give them the tools to succeed. If they don't do it, it's not their fault. But if you look at a company like AEW, and they put on guys and they put them on TV and they flub their lines and they screw stuff up, that's going to be on the company because they put them on TV. Do you know what I mean? Like that's going to be the perceivement of it. People are going to think that AEW have just hired a bunch of idiots. If for example, like again, like you said, a lot of those guys might not be that familiar with working TV, especially live TV. You know what I mean? All of this stuff needs to be factored in before we can, make too much of a decision. But we shall see. We shall see in a couple of weeks, I imagine.
Yeah, and I've not like got a dog in this fight at all. Like, I've spent a lot of, like all of the last however many years watching NXT on the WWE Network and stuff, and I'm a big fan of what they do and all the guys on the roster, but at the same time, I love this whole like bringing back the competition and giving it an edge of like two distinct companies who are on sort of mainstream TV and going head to head in terms of the night and time that they're both on TV and stuff. It feels like the old days, even though it definitely won't be like that in at the end of the day, because of, like you said earlier, about the whole like TV options now. You can just catch up and stuff and not have to worry about watching things live. So it's not going to be anything like it was in terms of Raw versus Nitro, but at the same time, it's still like, NXT versus AEW is, it just makes wrestling exciting again, I think, which isn't a bad thing at all.
Nice. You put a very positive spin on things. I, like the eternal pessimist that I am, want to just bring you down for a little second. So I thought of something. I'm like, do you think that we're coming to the end of a wrestling boom right now? And by that I mean, like, do you think people are gonna get a little bit too overexposed to it? They've had too much of it, now they're not going to be interested in it again. Because for a long time, people weren't interested in wrestling, and then it kind of came back very recently. So, like, now you've got Raw, SmackDown, NXT, they're all on TV. You've got AEW's coming up. The NWA are taping their shows. Major League Wrestling are taping their shows. Impact are still going. Ring of Honor is still going. They're both on TV as well. That's a lot of wrestling. I think that maybe too many dogs are jumping into this fight, and they don't all have to win. because like Impact, for example, they've been able to struggle along for many years, and they're really they're doing just fine. They could be doing better, but they're surviving as a company. Same with Ring of Honor, they're still going. But like once you start introducing all these other dogs into the fight, it's going to be interesting to see where all of this goes and who can survive and who can't survive. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's been that way for a while though. Like almost like the market's been watered down a bit, and there's so many options now, and not just even like all the names you mentioned, but like sign up to like different sort of services online to watch like other promotions as well, and that there's just so many options out there that people are inevitably gonna like pick the one that's for them, and have no interest whatsoever in any other one. So you have to roll with that, really. Like there's not much you can do about it. You can put on your best show and try and win people over, but ultimately people are just going to stick with the thing which is that grabbed them in the first place. So whether that be WWE or even like over here in the UK, like Progress, or like you say, ROH or TNA or whatever, everyone's going to have their own sort of dog in the fight, and I don't think you're going to be able to convince too many people to change that. But hopefully, people will just kind of try and sample as much as possible.
We'll see. We shall see. It's all going to be revealed in the next couple of weeks. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this whole topic before we wrap things up?
I think we've covered it pretty well.
I think we fucking nailed it as usual.
Yeah,
as we always do. So the next show, I don't know. Maybe we'll see like kind of fallout from how this has all gone. We'll have a better idea of how AEW is going in a couple of weeks. So maybe we'll cover this subject in another podcast very soon. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up here, guys. But thank you very much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Take it easy.